My first reaction after reading that first reading and hearing in the mood of this poor prophet, my first thought was poor Jeremiah. In the first reading, we find him in that very discouraged and depressed moment in his life. It appears he has reached a point where he just could not continue. He didn't know if he could go on anymore. He'd given it a shot, done the best he could, but he got tired of having no response. He got tired to saying the same thing over and over again, and he got tired that the people wouldn't respond. So he was worn out, and he felt he had no more strength to continue to deal with this negative people that he was sent to prophesy to. He just felt he couldn't get through to this stubborn people. Now keep in mind, Jeremiah became a prophet at a very young age. When he was first called a prophet, even then, if you read the book of Jeremiah, he was already protesting that he didn't want to do this. He says, I'm young. Now, he's probably a teenager. He says, I got a lot of parties I want to go to, a lot of things I want to do. I don't know if I like this prophet gig. And yet, he was told, don't worry, I'll put the words in your mouth and I will guide you through this. So he eventually responded, but he had great doubt. He said to the Lord, he said, oh, Lord God, I do not know how to speak, I'm too young. But the Lord reassured him, do not say I am too young. To whomever I send you, you shall go. Don't be afraid. I am with you to deliver you, to stand behind you. But the words that God gave Jeremiah to speak were hard words. He wasn't just saying to the people, now be good. He ended up having to use the words of God that spoke of destruction and judgment. And so people rejected Jeremiah, and they certainly rejected his message. They attacked him, they beat him, they threw him into prison. It was a tough life. Jeremiah began to see that his life was not turning out as he had hoped it would. And since he was a prophet, he didn't expect this kind of reaction. He thought that people would listen to him. This is why we hear him today complaining to the Lord. This is why he says he has been tricked. Misery and suffering were not what he signed up for. Or as he put it so beautifully there, God duped me. God tricked me, made me think that this was going to work, and it doesn't. So what might we learn from this troubled prophet? None of our many failings or shortcomings can be an excuse for us not to follow Jesus. Imperfect as we sometimes are, and Jeremiah certainly had his moments, we're still called to be disciples. We still are called, in a sense, to be prophets also. We call it our baptism. We were given the oil that set us aside as priest, prophet, and king, kingdom builder. And so we're all a mixture of gifts in our lives, and we're a mixture of deficiencies. We have talents and we have liabilities. We have blessings and we have flaws. We too often delude ourselves into thinking God is looking for only perfect disciples. God's tapping on the shoulder, the perfect ones, okay? And then the rest of us, well, God says, okay, be good, but, I don't need you right now. God is not looking for perfect people. He is looking for real people. God has no illusions. God knows who we are in all of our failings. Yet, God still calls us to love, to forgive, and to grow, no matter who we are. Recall last week we focused on the frail person of St. Peter. Even though he failed Jesus often, he was still chosen to be the foundation of the church, the rock. In the same way, even with all of our failings, we can still be the prophets, the disciples that Christ calls us to be. I think Jeremiah is a model for us when we find ourselves in painful places in which we never thought we would be. Maybe it's when our marriage seems to be failing, or when our loved one is dying, when we've been diagnosed with a very serious illness, when a person we loved has hurt us, when a financial burden seems overwhelming, and when the aging process slows us down and changes our lives. When we find ourselves in circumstances we never bargained for, Jeremiah tells us that we have the right to complain. So you can walk away and say, your pastor said you can complain. But I think that is the message of Jeremiah, that we have a right to complain, because sometimes life is hard. Life is difficult. These challenges are just overwhelming. And so we have a right to tell God of our hurt and our uncertainty, to let God know that I might not be happy. This whole situation stinks. And when we are in pain, being honest is more important than being polite. Telling God that we are disappointed, that we are angry, is not a sign of disrespect. Rather, it shows that we are taking our relationship with God seriously. Seriously enough to come before God as we really are. Our real selves, not this fake self. This is, oh, I can put up with this because it's God's will. And underneath we're going, argh. No, true faith is be able to seriously come before God as we really are, to challenge God to save us. When we put our pain on the table, when we get our anger off our chest, it opens a way for us to listen to what God may say in response. God's words may be words of comfort and peace, but to reach that place, we must begin with honesty. We must tell the Lord what we really think and feel. Remember what Jesus said from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus tells us that we must carry our cross. But Jeremiah, in our reading today, shows us that we do not have to like it, that carrying the cross. Jesus does not want us to suffer. Jesus gets no joy out of our suffering. Come to me, he says, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest. But our experience shows us that we will suffer. No one is exempt from that reality, but we need not suffer alone. As a Christian community, we can reach out to one another in times of crisis. We can extend a hand of support and comfort, even with social distancing. That should be a part of our mission as we leave our liturgy each week, especially in these times of so much uncertainty caused by COVID-19, the civil unrest all around us, and the challenge to end violence against and unjust treatment of our black brothers and sisters. In the midst of that, how important it might be a friendly call, an encouraging card, of supporting social distant embrace, and a daily prayer can be of help to get us through those difficult times. We need to know that we have not been duped, that we are loved, and we can experience the love of God through the way that we now treat one another.